for those of you who've joined us again, we have one last thing to finish the evening off. In fact, we now got two last things because I've got one other thing up my sleeve. But the next thing on the bill is a wonderful story, and it's going to be a story into the evening, and it's written and performed by Matt McCall, who is a writer, has written many things and is often at Hopeless Maine events. So here it is. It's Matt McCall, and it's called Hopeless Aufhocher, which I believe is German. If I've pronounced that wrong, I am very sorry. But here it is, Matt McCall's story.
The year of our Lord, 1762. My horse was tiring, not the tiredness of sleep and recuperation, but the tiredness of death. That strange weariness of the spirit that comes upon the physical body when it knows that it can never recover. But in knowing, the body strives on as if trying to squeeze the very last drop out from the fountain of life before it is forced to give up forever. Poor horse. I didn't even know her name. A chestnut mare brought in haste at the end of the Hopeless town fair. Hopeless, a fitting name for such a dreary, depressing little town full of sad-eyed, dreary people. I was in a hurry. Time pressed upon me. Brushed up and rested, she looked as good a proposition as a few coins could stretch to. So I bought the unfortunate animal, harness, saddle, and all. I set off as soon as I could, regardless of the hour. I had no time to waste on niceties or luxuries of food and rest for myself. Saxby. I had to be in Saxby before morning, at the crack of dawn. It was a matter of life and death. Not mine, you must understand, but my brother Jamie, little golden-haired Jamie, who never hurt anything in his life. Jamie would stand before the gallows at dawn if I were not there to stop it. I patted the horse's neck and tried to urge her just a few steps further, but it was of no use. We were down to little more than a walk, and her head would not come up. I stopped and I dismounted. Here on the forest road, with the dusk fast fading into the night, there was nowhere to seek aid. No one from whom to beg or buy another horse. Just us alone, me and my nameless old horse, its huge brown eyes now dull and empty in the light of my lantern. I checked my pistol once and then again and cocked the hammerhead. The shot rang out into the silent forest, the sound bouncing from tree to tree like nothing. But nothing stirred, nothing heard, or at least that's what I thought. I did not fear brigands, why should I? Am I not reputed to be amongst the worst of them all? I fear nothing, least of all the supposed denizens of Condriac Forest. But still, the place, it unnerved me a little. Not the sound, but the lack of sound. The forest showed no reaction to the death of my poor horse. It was strange, for I have killed a dozen men, some in the coldest of blood, but death of this old horse touched me deeply. Why? I cannot say. I stood there for a while beside the slain animal and pondered the situation. The saddle and harness, my bags, my possessions, what to do? I could not leave them, but I could not carry them. Maybe drag them onward, but to where? I was pressed for time. Jamie's face was before my mind's eye, and the choice was clear. Well, someone would have a lucky find in the morning, and maybe they would bury the poor animal in exchange for its meagre pickings. For Jamie's sake, I left the horse and all my belongings, taking only what I could carry easily. A shoulder bag, a lantern, my pistol. Time pressed, and I had to be in Saxby before dawn. Into the darkening forest I strode, like a man who knew where he was going. In truth, I did, but the last time I came through here, I was in no mind to mark the way. I had just shot a pre-Jep Scott company man, a thief with a land title, and had been well paid to do it. With a pouch full of old man Jacobson's silver and a mob after me, I did not pay much attention to my route out of Saxby. Now every step, every pothole and rut were a revelation, and my boots were not up to the task. Town boots, not country boots. Town coat, not countryman's coat. Not gear for a forest hike. I stumbled onwards, praying for the light of some woodsman's cabin or hunter's camp, a forest hovel, where I could beg or borrow another horse. Nonetheless, as the darkness grew, I began to understand that I had already come too far. Too far from the places where even superstitious countrymen dared tarry at night. Tales of the old Wabanaki Indian curses, monsters, and even stranger tales of what the Saxby family had been getting up to in these dark primeval woodlands for generations discouraged travellers from venturing into the woods at night. If I was to meet anybody upon this road, they would only be travellers like myself, the foolish and the lost. Which one was I? Neither, at this time, I decided resolutely. Onwards I pressed, through muddy puddle and ankle-breaking ruts along this ribbon of civilization as it snaked even deeper into the darkness of the forest, with lamp held high and eyes straining to detect the pitfalls and gnarled roots before my foot found them. If I fell here, I would pray to God alone knows what. In these places wolves still hunt and bears roamed. I envisioned wild boar gnawing at my bones. Foolish thoughts. The greatest danger was that my own imagination would frighten me into doing something foolish, and I would get lost and become prey to the most savage of nature's beasts, the cold. I stopped for a moment to admonish myself for such foolishness and secure my coat around me. My only option was to keep on going, with faint hope of encountering another human being, if only for company's sake, for Jamie's sake. To keep to the road it was clear to follow, even if this darkness, and keep to the middle, where there was less ruts to trip or fall in. Best foot forward, onward to the fearless adventure. Where I went. I had been walking for what must have been 2 hours now, and as the night had drawn down, so had the temperature. In some places there was a thin wafer crust of ice on the puddles, and the mud was beginning to harden into jagged lumps. In the lantern's light I could see the thick, steamy haze of my breath in the cold air. My hands and feet were frozen, and my arms ached from holding the lamp aloft. I was tired, bone tired, but I had to keep on. God, I prayed, God give me strength to keep going. I wasn't meant to end here, in this darkness, the cold. I have too much to do. I must save Jamie, poor Jamie. God, don't let him die here. But I doubt God was listening. In the darkness, I stumbled on. After what seemed an age, I noticed with alarm that the light from my lantern was no longer reaching the ground, growing dim as the oil ran out. I shook it vigorously, begging it not to fail me, but only a hollow sloshing sound came from the font. For a few minutes it burned brighter, but soon it grew weaker and weaker, and though I dipped it and shook it, at last it finally died. I shook it vigorously one last time and tried to relight it, but my cold, stiff fingers fumbled. No matter how I begged or cursed it, it would not relight. Darkness is not enough to describe what closed upon me. It was black, pitch black, absolute black, as if you had immersed your face wide-eyed into a vat of tar. I dare not move. All I could hear was my own breathing and the pounding of my fearful heart. I could not move a muscle. I closed my eyes, favouring my own body's darkness against the all-encompassing ice-cold black. How strange it is that when you screw your eyes tightly shut, you see light and colour, bright flares in the darkness. I marvelled at them. Their intensity and clarity, these strange lights from my own mind. Amidst these lights was a face, little Jamie. Not as he is now, but as he was when we were young. As the flittering bird of panic calmed in my breast, I began to think rationally again. I had no choice but to keep on. I think my eyes were open as I turned towards where I thought the roadside would be. I would have to feel my way to the edge of the road and along the tree line like a blind man. But I would keep on, for Jamie. Carefully I picked my way towards the verge. I stumbled, I tripped, I plunged a foot into a freezing puddle up to my knee. Furious now, I cursed loudly and struggled out of the hole. Thick cold mud clung to my foot, my clothes and my hands. Frustration was boiling in me now. This was it then, God? Where a man sets out to right the wrongs of his life, to save the life of an innocent, this is your answer? To thwart him? To beset him like Job? To force him to give up? Well, I won't. I will not give up. I shouted at the unforgiving God. I pulled off the boot and poured out the muddy water. If I give up, then Jamie's death will be on my conscience forever. No, I will not give up. Thwart me, if you will, O wicked God. But then his innocent death will be on your conscience, not mine. I dragged the sopping boot on again and wiped my hands upon my coat tails. My hands. In the darkness, I could see the movement of darker forms upon the rough fabric. Amazed, I gawped about me. Yes, there, in the darkness, shapes, forms. My God, light! I could see the stars in the cloudless heavens. Like a child in a darkened room, my eyes were growing accustomed to what little light there was. Laughter escaped me. What a fool I'd been. My lantern had lit my way, but blinded me to the night's clear starlight. I could see the road clearly against the black mass of the tree line, the sky, the starlight reflected in every puddle. Oh, what a fool I had been. The way was clear. Off I set with renewed vigour. I had wasted enough time, but now I could see, and as I walked, my vision was getting clearer. I marvelled at it all. Although I stumbled once or twice, it is easier to spot water-filled ruts as they reflect the starlight than it had been with the lantern. A new sense of determination grew in my breast. The hour was late, but I would not stop. Saxby, by dawn. I began to whistle. Why was I so happy? I don't know. It was as if it seemed to me that things were in the lap of God now. If I made it to Saxby by dawn or not was no longer down to my failure. I was trying as hard as I possibly could, wasn't I? Jamie's life was not in my hands alone. I had made my decision and I was doing my best. What more could anybody ask of me? What more could Jamie ask of me? But I knew deep down inside, I knew. Too much time had been lost. Too much time wasted. Jamie would take his last walk to the gallows in the cold grey light of dawn, and I would be too late. Too late to stop it. Damn it. Damn me. I had made my promise to Jamie, to God, to myself, and I would try everything I could to keep it. A momentary loss of concentration sent me sprawling onto the rock-hard frozen ground. I lay there shocked, the air knocked out of me so hard I could not even swear or cuss at my own stupidity. Then came a sound. Not the titter of some irate, disturbed animal or the slap of a startled bird. No, something else. Something bigger. Not a growl or a snarl. Something other. Something awful. I froze, not knowing what it could be. Foxes screamed like a woman possessed, but on what earth makes a sound like that? A bear? Or worse, a wolf? Wolves! A pack intent on eating me alive. I once visited a rich man's menagerie in New York, and there I heard a similar sound. Some strange beast from the dark continent that neither barked nor howled, but with malicious glare and baleful eye laughed in an inhuman mocking timbre. The thought goaded me into action. I was on my feet with pistol drawn in an instant, the reassuring weight of the weapon in my hand giving me the courage to face whatever beast prowled out there. I stood silent, listening and watchful. Where did it come from? Make that sound again, damn you. Let me know you are there, or did I imagine you? I heard a movement to my left, a rustling in the bracken deep amidst the trees. Something big moved. I levelled my pistol and waited. I could see nothing. I knew not to waste the shot. As many have learnt to their cost, I am an excellent shot with pistol and carbine. However, accuracy is only the lesser half of the game. It is patience that matters, as much as a keen eye and a steady hand. I waited. Nothing. Silence. I had it moved off? This laughing creature? I waited a while more, but time was pressing, and I had to go on if I was to be in Saxby by dawn. I walked on, now with pistol in hand, carefully stopping occasionally to strain my eyes and ears at the dark mass that flanks the roadside. I am no countryman. I have not a hunter's ears or eyes, but slowly I became certain that whatever was out there, beyond the darkness, was still there, watching me, following me. I could feel its eyes upon me as certain as a physical touch. A strange dread began to fill me. I was being hunted. Was I the prey for some terrible wild beast so hungry for food at any cost that it would dare to threaten an armed man? Wild, drunken tales from the alehouses of Brunswick unfolded in my head. Tales of rabid wolves and angry bears and things more terrible and savage that sprang blood-soaked from the fertile minds of tap-room sages. Night gaunts, as they call them in these parts, a local word for nightmares, brought on by too much beer and too little rational thought. In case in point, being the misadventures of friends whose untimely, unloathsome and unknown ends were somehow closely detailed by their narrators. All nonsense. I was scaring myself into believing the stuff of kindergarten tales. Any wild animal stalking me would be looking more for scraps and tidbits than blood. I tramped onwards with determination. I even finally relaxed enough to resume my tuneless whistle, but this time instead of some old variety song, I chose a rousingly good Wesleyan carol. Then came the noise of movement again, this time louder and much nearer, something moving fast through the forest floor. And as I stopped to strain my eyes and ears, there came that hideous cackle. Animalistic, but no animal on earth could make such a noise, nor should. My resolve broke. I flung up my pistol and barely had the sense to shield my eyes before I fired. The gun roared, the flash was blinding, and the echo rumbled through the forest like thunder. Then silence. That'll teach you, you swine. Ha ha! Didn't expect that, did you? As my night vision cleared, I congratulated myself fulsomely. Audaciously, I'd stood my ground and took time to reload, watching and listening for any further disturbance, though. To my utter relief, nothing came. Had I killed it? The idea quite excited me. Ultimately, though, I decided that, although I'm an excellent shot, I had fired wildly at something I could not see. A man shooting at shadows. The chances of actually hitting it, whatever it was, were non-existent. But I congratulated myself on the idea that I had probably scared the life out of it. I powdered the flash pan, replaced the cover, and cocked the hammer. If it came back again, then I would have no choice but to kill it. I searched the darkening verge and squinted into the inky darkness of the forest edge, but I could make out nothing. No sound, no movement, nothing. Finally satisfied, I turned to continue my journey. As I cast one last glance over my shoulder, for safety's sake, I saw it. Standing out in the middle of the road, about a dozen yards behind me. At first I thought it was a dishevelled man, a ragged fellow traveller or woodsman who had been alarmed by the gunshot and had come to investigate the reason for the noise, or a lowly gamekeeper, perhaps come to see if I was a poacher or some such. Surprised by the unexpected company, I raised my hand and hailed him. "Good evening to you, my friend." But this was no friend. I gaped, terror-struck, as the dark silhouette, almost liquid in grace, crouched low to the ground and slunk towards me. I was rooted by fear, unable to move or think as it slowly closed the gap between us. Something clicked on the ground as it moved, and with mounting dread I realised it was walking on the backs of its hands, and the clicking came as its talons rapped upon the frozen earth. It was near now, so near I could make out its monstrous shape, like that of some massively deformed man, long of limb and covered with thick matted hair, and with its approach came the vilest smell, like an evil concoction of musk and rotted vegetation. Its huge eyes, caught in the starlight, gleamed back with a sickening hollow green glare. Suddenly it gave forth an awful laughing sound. Whatever the spell of fear that has thrown over me broke with that sound. I screamed, I must admit, out of fright and anger. I levelled my pistol and fired point blank into its face. In the flare and roar of the explosion, I glimpsed the horrific visage of my tormentor clearly. A face so awful it was beyond description. Neither human nor animal, a gargoyle's face, full of gleeful malevolence and evil beyond imagining. In that instant I was blinded by the muzzle flash of my own weapon and helpless against the monster in the pitch black of the night. I screamed and staggered away from the spot of our encounter, stumbling and tripping as I ran, frantically, heedlessly, panic-stricken. I ran with my lungs bursting blindly into the ice-cold night. How long I ran, I had no idea. But when exhaustion and my regained senses finally brought me to a halt, I found my night vision had returned enough for me to be able to take stock of the situation. Though I was thankfully still on the road, more through simple luck than judgment, and I had reached some form of clearing, whether natural or man-made I could not tell, I could see clearly enough in the starlight to tell that the nightmare creature that I had encountered was nowhere to be seen. With a great sense of relief, I took time to take stock of myself. Wet, muddy, and cold. I had numerous bumps and bruises and a wrist that was so painful I was sure it was strained, but thankfully I was in one whole piece. Had I killed it? Had I escaped it? Surely it was dead. I shot it at the closest of ranges, and no creature, man nor beast, could survive such a blast unharmed. I envisioned it half dead upon the roadside, with most of its horrendous face blown away by the pistol ball's path. Thank God I had brought my gun. I would have been helpless without it. I slipped my hand to my belt to reassure myself and found nothing. I desperately searched, but it was gone. Dropped in the mad scramble to escape. Lost somewhere back there, on the road, between the monster and myself. Damn it all! Had I not come here to make amends? Was I not on a mission of mercy? Why me? Jamie's face was again before me. Time was short now, and there was no possible way I would make it to Saxby by dawn. Jamie was as good as done for, his fate sealed, and I was powerless to stop it. It was not my fault. I had tried, hadn't I? I had raced across half of New England like a madman for the last week, trying to get to Saxby to save my little brother from paying the price for my actions. I promised him I would never leave him to die in my place, and I tried to keep my word. Oh God, how I tried. I'd ridden 2 horses to exhaustion, 1 to death, begged, borrowed, stolen, lied to get here, and all for nothing. Here I stood, beaten and mocked by God and that laughing monstrosity. Is this it then, God? Well, at least the last thing could mock me no longer. Jamie would face the gallows, poor little Jamie, and when he searched the crowd for my face, it would not be there. I'm sorry, Jamie. I tried. I really tried. But it wasn't my fault that the horse I bought was a dying nag. I was in a hurry. How could I have known? Or that I would not have enough oil in my lantern. It was not my fault. I will cut that damned horse trader's throat when I get back to Hopeless. I promise, Jamie. I could see Jamie's face there in the darkness, through the tears that half blinded me, just out of focus. I'm sorry, but you should not have gone back to Saxby. I told you not to. The town magistrates wouldn't care if you were there when I killed the company man. And if they couldn't catch me, they'd hang you. Damn it, Jamie. It's your own fault for being so weak, stupid boy. If only you had listened. We'd have been in some warm tavern in Boston with a wench under each arm and enough money to keep us in luxury for years. Why did you go back, you idiot? So I had tarried in Boston and wasted time in whores' beds and drinking houses. So what? I wasn't the one who wanted to give himself up, the one who, with the attack of conscience. Well, it was going to be a fatal attack of scruples, Jamie, and it wasn't my fault. Damn you, stupid boy. Why should I die for your stupidity? Damn you, Jamie, you brought this upon yourself. I screamed at the phantom face that hung in the darkness. The phantom face in the darkness wasn't Jamie. It lunged forward. One hair-covered hand, gnarled and beset with vicious talons, seized my arm. Another tore at my chest. I fought it wildly. I fought it with everything I had. Kicking and screaming, beating it with my fist. I fought it like a man possessed. Somehow I got free of its grasp and turned to flee. But I was too slow. It leapt upon my back, slamming me into the ground, and sank its claws into my thighs and shoulders. I tried desperately to fight it, but it was too strong. All that was left for me to do was await its savage teeth ripping into my throat. This was it. Was to be it then? Death? I knew it. At the jaws of this awful beast. My rendered carcass would be found in the morning, maybe, or at least what was left of it. I felt a strange sense of indifference about it. I was too numb to fight, too tired to care. So here I was to die. Well, better here than at the end of a rope. At least Jamie couldn't blame me for this. I lay there, face against the cold earth, awaiting my death. But it did not come. Instead, the creature began to tear at my clothes, ripping them from my body, rending my coat and breeches. Its mad laughter rang in my head, and its stench was nauseating. What was it doing? What did it want? It violated me. Like an animal, it violated me. I tried to struggle, but it was too powerful. The more I fought, the deeper its talons sank. I screamed, I begged, I pleaded, but this was of no use. It only cackled louder as it fed upon my writhing agonies. At long last it erupted. What felt like ice within me, and it slumped across my back, its heavy, matted head on my shoulder, and fetid breath on my cheek. The pain was indescribable. I lay there still, trying to act dead, and wishing that I was. Maybe it would leave me now. Maybe I could survive this nightmare. But as if it could read my thoughts, its grip tightened, and its horrid face turned to me, and it spoke. Its words were babble, incomprehensible, but words no less. This thing was no animal, no matter how distorted or depraved. It was a man. In that instant, I knew with full horror the nature of this beast. It was a demon, a creature from beyond imagining. Little wonder, then, that my pistol had been useless against it. All that effort to escape had been in vain. It seemed to know that I recognised it for what it was, and delighted in the fact, cackling wildly and shouting its gibberish in my ear. I fought even harder now, in fear not of mortal death, but of the loss of my immortal soul. I forced myself to my feet with the demon still clinging on my back and tried desperately to shake it off, but it was no use. It hung on like a child on a hobby horse, and all my efforts only seemed to amuse it. As I floundered about, I prayed and begged and beseeched Almighty God to save me from this abomination. I repented my sins. I disavowed my actions, my wicked ways. I cried for salvation, and all the demon did was laugh louder. From somewhere it must have torn a branch or frond, and it began to beat me with it, thrashing my thighs and back and goading me like a jockey on a horse. "Run, cur!" it screamed, as it clambered high upon my back. "Run!" So I ran. I ran like an animal. I ran with this screaming demon upon my back. I ran for all I was worth. When I fell or tripped, it beat me to my feet, and when I flagged, it dug its claws deeper into the bare flesh. And on it goaded me. Onwards I ran, onwards, my heart pounding, my senses reeling, as if I could in some way outrun the screaming demon upon my back. As I ran, it seemed to calm, its voice growing less excited and lower. Some of the words now I could understand, a Latin phrase here, a strange foreign word there, old words, ancient words, something about this forest, and soldiers, and death. Varus, Varus, this is something. And it kept repeating and then laughing, that terrible demonic laugh. Whether it was its name or some strange war cry, I do not know. Each time I fell, it beat me mercilessly until I climbed back to my feet, and each time it grew heavier and heavier. I knew I would not survive this. My lungs were on fire, my heart felt like I was going to explode. I was near death now, like my poor old horse, but this monster was showing me no such mercy. This demon was intent on riding me to my certain death. Finally, after what must have been hours and miles, I fell, and no matter how hard it beat me, I had not the energy to get up. My feet were raw, my knees and hands was torn and bloody. It leapt off my back and capered about, thrashing me with the stick and clawing at my back, but I could not get up. I would not get up. I covered my head with my arms and screamed back at it. Let me die here, I pleaded. I can take no more. I would rather die than suffer this horror. Let me die here. Ergo et ad mortem, something. It was not laughing now. There was no mirth in it, screaming anymore. It was furious. It was scared. Yes, that was it. It was scared. As it frantically beat me, I could sense there was fear in it. Fear? My dazed mind tried to grope for what possibly could make this demonic thing afraid. I dared to lift my head a fraction and realised that the first rays of sunlight were tinting the tips of the long grass on the roadside. Dawn. Dawn! Well, so all that dogma of the churchmen and the superstitious was right. These demons that haunt us fear the light of day. I almost cried out in joy. I clambered unsteadily to my feet and greeted the morning sun. Thank God, dear God, thank you. Dawn had come and I was saved. I thought the nightmare was over, but it was not. When I turned about to see where I was, there stood the demon behind me, passively waiting. With its vile, flat head hung low between its hunched shoulders, its long grey tongue flicked out across its ugly mouth and huge black dripping nose. It looked uncomfortable, but it was still there, its big glassy eyes squinting in the daylight. Slowly it stretched its long arm towards me. I tried to turn to run. Too tired to run, I stood my ground and demanded to know what it wanted from me. I had not the strength left in me to be afraid of it. It paused and cocked its head as if listening to something far off. What do you want from me? I screamed at it again. It looked startled and then it grinned, showing its savage teeth. Run, Crur, it said, brandishing the branch with its gnarled hand. Run if you want to live. In the distance I could hear a lone church bell pealing. The sound seemed to give me the courage to stare the demon in its cold, hollow eyes. No, no more, I said. No, I will not. Then you die. With all the dignity I could muster, I answered, then kill me, monster. I'm not afraid to die. Then I shall see you again tonight. At that it gave out another wicked laugh, and before my eyes it vanished into thin air. I had been staring at the spot where it disappeared. I had no idea for how long, until voices brought my senses back to me. 2 men were coming, riding horses. As they approached me, they howled at me, and with the last of my strength before I collapsed upon the verge, I howled them back. As they reached me, I realised by their shakos and their uniforms they were militaire, constables from some nearby town. They regarded me with suspicious eyes and noted my ragged and blood-stained clothes and asked me who I was. I did not answer their questions, but for fear of thinking I was a madman, I explained to them I had been attacked by a wild animal and begged for water. They took pity on me, at least enough to pass me a canteen. I drank deeply, like I had never drunk before. The older constable then pressed me for my name, but instead I asked him where he had come from. The other, the younger, with fresh face and eager eye, told me with clear relish that they were on their way home to Saxby to witness a hanging. When I started to laugh, they drew back, thinking me insane, and demanded to know what I found so amusing. I simply told them my name, and that it was I who should hang this morning.
That was the wonderful Matt McCall with a story called Aufhocher. Now, that's a German word, and I recommend you Google it because it's a very interesting kind of demon. And if you were paying attention to the story, it's a demon that jumps on people's backs. So there we go. So it's time to say hello to Tom and Nimue again. Hello, Tom and Nimue.
Hello.
How are you guys doing? Have you enjoyed today's content? Because you haven't seen a lot of it. It was news to you as much as it was news to our audience.
It was amazing. We're pretty emotional, actually. That was mind blowing. Yeah, we do have the feels.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I'm quite emotional as well, but I'm emotional most of the time. So and after a couple of beers, it gets worse. So
Yeah.
No, there's been some fantastic stuff today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been brilliant, and it's been wonderful to prepare all the stuff and get it ready for this festival. And as we've spoken before, there is more people wanting to produce content and create stuff. So maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Oh, do let's.
Yeah. So now, just before we say goodnight, I've got a video to play you, and then we will say, "Oh, hello." Is that Mr. Anderson?
Good, yes.
Awesome. So I've just got one video to play, and then after that we'll say goodnight to our viewers. So hang on, viewers, we're nearly there.
There's a place that feels so familiar. A little taste, here's what I will bring ya. A little tribute to my favourite world builders. One sip and you'll be feeling a little off kilter. You need a cooking pot big enough for magic, not exotic or lavish, more earthbound, organic. An open fire and the open air, placed in a place where few would dare to tread with care or dare to brew. But you're not like them and they're not you. So who's to say what's good or wrong? Sometimes darkness brings the best of songs. Sometimes the fringes is where we belong. Sometimes all you need is Nimue and Tom. So pull up your armchair and settle in. Open the book and let's begin the recipe. Here is the recipe. It's just a little recipe. Of seaweed and 2 scoops of fog, a creak in the bark of a distant dog, a salamandra's tale told by the firelight, a poem, a post, a sprinkle of twilight, some fluff from a dust cat, a sense of doom, the autumn gloom, a walking spoon, a night soil man, the air of Stroud, or polychromatic, well washed out, a beating heart, complete with ventricles, several armfuls of wriggling tentacles, all make a stew of hopeless Maine, a warm embrace, a dark refrain. This is a dinner of a magical fantasy, every single part best enjoyed with a family, whether it's made through blood or dust. To hopeless Maine, we send our love, it's a recipe. This is the recipe. It's just a little recipe. Nimue, whose creations inspire, terrify and unnerve. Delicious art and surging curves. Suitable verses and beautiful words. Thank you, you beautiful, beautiful people. May you continue to serve up your delicious tentacle soup. And may we all be lucky enough to receive a serving. Now until forever.
Well, I think that's a very suitable way to finish the evening there. Thanking Tom and Nimue, the creators of Hopeless Maine. Thank you very much for bringing this wonderful world to us. And I, for one, am very grateful having collaborated on a few things and enjoyed it tremendously. And it's a tremendously inspiring thing that makes you think of other stuff that you then have to write and then have to do. And yeah, it's a big driver, I think. Definitely a big driver. And I don't know whether anybody noticed, but the Scientific Society of Hopeless Maine was in that little video. And I was in there just very briefly. If you blinked, you probably missed it. But anyway, so it only remains me to thank Tom and Nimue and everybody else who took part in this fabulous festival. It was good, wasn't it, Tom? Wasn't it? No, it was fantastic.
Oh,
fantastic.
God.
Really good.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for watching. And if you're watching this later, some point later, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you go back and watch all the different videos that make up this little festival of Hopeless Maine. And hopefully we will see you again soon. So good night to Tom and Nimue.
Good night. Loved you all.
And good night, everybody.